Hello, everybody. I don't know why you're watching this, if you are watching the recording. Probably because you were involved in the Dame Hive play-by-post server, or you got really bored. Whatever the reason, I'm Rob. I'm the guy who created Erelais, and therefore the city of Dame Hive, and the history of the world that it sits in. And this is Katie. Katie is one of the server mods for the Dame Hive play-by-post server, and has had probably the most experience playing in Erelais and in the Dame Hive city. And the goal of our chat that we are about to have, and we have a few people in chat. Katie's got earbuds on so she can, or headphones on, so she can listen to them, and let us know if they ask any questions. It's just going to be our audio on this thing, so while we talk about kind of where Dame Hive came from, and potentially that can inform where it's going. I have whiskey, so it's a good night. Hi, Katie.
Hello. I've got whiskey too, because I stole some of yours. Okay.
Is it better for me to start by saying things, or is it better for us to start by answering questions?
I don't know. Maybe say some things.
Okay.
And then break for questions.
And then there will be an opportunity for questions. Maybe
Yes.
we will know what questions to ask
Exactly.
by virtue of saying something.
I need to narrow it down.
All right. So, Erelais is the current name for this world. It used to be called something else. It used to be called Ceres. Ceres, for anybody who's taking notes. Ceres had something of a different political and geographical landscape, but it is the primary continent on the material plane. And the material plane, and indeed all of the planes, were created by a triumvirate of three gods. There was the lawful god, Jolin. There was the neutral god, Morrow. And the chaos god, Phobos. And specifically, none of these were particularly good or evil. One of them just loved order, one of them loved chaos and fucking with things, and the other one was just trying to make sure that everybody got along and stuff actually got done, with the two of them constantly bickering and frustrating one another. They each were responsible for the creation of various player character races, definitely all the ones that appear in the player's handbook, and some of the monster races, like dragons, giants, and whatnot. I don't think it's particularly important to the current world as to who was responsible for which, and also I don't have my notes for that, so let's skip by that, but know that the gods do care about the races as well as just people in general. Also, Jolin was primarily responsible for creating the upper planes, as well as the plane of law. Phobos had an instrumental hand in the Feywild, Shadowfell, and the Elemental Planes. And again, Morrow is just trying to organize everything here. They each had children. They had demigods. And those demigods do not appear across our pantheon, but some of them went on to become original archfays and such as that. Now, the three gods tried very hard at the beginning of the world to micromanage mortal life. Whenever something bad was going on, or something needed to be stopped or prevented or added to their minds, the gods would directly intervene in the world. When they did, two things would happen. One, the world got irreparably fucked up. Something undoable was done. And the exertion of that act would deprive the gods of a sliver of their infinite power. These were called shards of divinity, and there were 7 great times across history where the gods directly intervened before they realized, no, we need to stop doing this. And mortals began to collect these shards of divinity. And they would take on aspects of the divine here on the material plane. We will probably come at some point to a mention of the God King Gilgamesh, because I think it's good to give player characters names that they already associate with something, so they don't have to learn something entirely new to learn a bit of your world lore. So the God King Gilgamesh was a mortal human man who once had the whole earth united under him. All nations, all lands, all peoples bend the knee to one dude. He had one of these shards of divinity, one that made him incredibly charismatic and had the ability to command basically anything not divine. Another shard of divinity that was out there was a shard that allowed the complete and total obliteration of something, the erasure of something from existence. If you ever hear me mention the black spot in reference to a geographical location, that was where this big old island used to be, where people started blaspheming the gods, and they said, you know what, enough of this, and they smoted it. And now there's a giant hole in the world that sailors who have been around a long time will have seen and talk about and bring horror stories of just where the world ends. This big black spot on the map. So anyway, the gods decided that, yeah, that was a bad thing to do, and they should probably stop doing that. Because someone collected all of the shards of divinity that were running around the world and ascended to godhood. And immediately retired as soon as they did. They said, you know what, being a god is not all that cool. I saved the world. I don't really want to fuck with it. I'm heading off to the Feywild and becoming king of the Feywild. And that's precisely what they did. But it set a precedent where mortals could achieve divinity if circumstances were right. It's only been done a handful of times, but it is possible. With the realization that intervening directly in the material plane at their full power was a bad idea, the gods created lesser gods. Jolin made a wife for himself named Egress. Faves made an aspect of himself called Valfor. And almost every other divine in the pantheon came from Jolin, Maro, and Faves shaving off pieces of themselves to try and be kind of watered-down versions that could interact on their behalf in ways that they would like with the material plane. And it still didn't exactly work out. Even these fragments of godhood were too powerful for the material plane to handle. So, the gods, and when I say the gods, I am actually including demons and devils and whatnot, anything that, how the mortal planes understand fiends and celestials, what they are all technically the same kinds of creatures. They're all gods in the chrysalis, as it were. They just live in different places and promote different things and have different kinds of followers, and so we on the material planes compartmentalize them in ways that are beneficial to us, helpful to us. So all the gods, including the bad ones, made a pact. They said, you know what? We like the material plane. We like having these people worship us. They are amusing. They are interesting. They are getting up to some stuff. They are promoting our wishes in kind of the one contested plane in existence. So we would kind of like to keep it around. So each of us is going to give a bit of our power, a proportionally identical amount, and empower a single mortal. And this individual, this divine champion, is going to possess as much power as a mortal's form possibly can. And they're going to run the material plane for us. And over time, it's not always been a great dude that is the divine champion. The divine champion retains their own moral compass. They retain their own interests and goals. So you've had ones that have been champions for justice. You have had ones that are avatars of peace. You have had ones that are focused on conquest and domination. But at some point, a divine champion would no longer be the divine champion. The gods would agree to nominate a new person. They would kind of breach the neutrality between the various gods' aims that the divine champion was supposed to embody, and they would be replaced. Never were they killed or defeated or ended in that way. Until fairly recently in history, like genuinely only a couple of years ago, the God's Plague began. The inhabitants of the world are not clear on the details of this. In fact, they're not even sure if or which gods are dead. But one of the functions of the gods is meant to be to provide each mortal creature with a soul. There is a place, a instrument, a machine, as it were, in the divine realms of the gods called the Soul Forge. And it was the construction of the combined efforts of Morrow, Thaves, and Jolin when they decided to make mortals. They had to make souls, and those souls had to come from somewhere, and they come from the Soul Forge. And assigning a soul to every mortal creature is a direct function of the gods. And after untold millennia of a 100% success rate, they goofed. There was a creature, a man named Walter Durst, who was born without a soul. This divine error was so antithetical to the existence of the gods. If the gods are real and the gods are competent and the gods are all-powerful and the gods are omniscient and the gods are all-knowing, then it follows that this kind of thing wouldn't happen, and yet it did. And that made Walter Durst something of divine antimatter, is I guess the way to put it. He was an Ashura, which Pathfinder classifies as a mistake of the gods. And nothing that the gods do would affect him. And the slightest touch of him to anything divine would erase that divine thing. And Walter got it in his head that if the gods had failed him, then it followed that the gods could fail everyone. So mortals should wean themselves from the dependence upon the gods. And he learned a whole bunch of magic and started going around the plains, killing gods. Just walking into their strongholds, not being affected by anything they could throw at him, poking them on the shin, and letting them die. He started by doing this to the Divine Champion, actually in the Steerage Capstan Bazaar in Dame Hunt. Which is why, in our play-by-post server, there is a stain on the ground of the Capstan Bazaar in Dame Hunt. Expression of the Divine Champion's power being lost there has marked the earth. We will come back to that, but several of the key players amongst the gods are gone now. Jolin is gone, Damus is gone, I believe Relvonic is gone, and a lot of the gods that kind of cooperated with and were associated with some of these larger gods are waning in power, where some of the lesser gods who were playing second fiddle all this time have started seizing an opportunity to expand their portfolio and rule what they could. Now, unbeknownst to everyone else out there, there is, or was, a band of adventurers going around collecting bits of the Divine Champion's power, because the Divine Champion, in an instant before being erased, realized what was happening and just kind of scattered the divine essence that he was given, and it went into various mortals, and that was the plot of another campaign we were playing. And some of those people may or may not appear over the course of the existence of the play-by-post server. If anybody finds that an interesting thing to follow up on, we can. That is basically the deal with the creation of the world, the divine power, the divine pact to stay away from the material plane, to let their agents have autonomy. There, they will empower mortals to do things, but they're not going to touch it. They're not going to send anybody. If they were to do it, then the other remaining gods would have to respond in kind, and then there wouldn't be a material plane to fight over anymore. So it's sort of a Cold War situation amongst the gods of don't fuck with that place. I also want to talk about the history of Blackreach. I also want to talk about the history of the Ember Isles and Dragonkind, but I've kind of hit the end of the thought of the role of divinity in the world, and I think it would be a good time to pause for questions.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Oh, yes. I have a couple questions. I know we have, assumedly, 3 people on the call here. I can hear you guys. Rob cannot hear you guys. Do you have any questions that you would like me to transfer over for you and ask? Now's your chance if you do have questions. I don't hear anything yet.
Yeah, I don't see anything flashing green.
Type it just in case.
You can go ahead and start with one.
Okay, let's see. So, the Shards of Divinity, are they all the same thing?
They looked, I mean, so I was a little bit inspired by the Arkenstone from Lord of the Rings and the fucking Chaos Emeralds from Sonic the Hedgehog, because of course I am. So there were 7 of them, and they were all different. There was one that governed time. There was one that governed creation. There was one that governed destruction. There was one that allowed you to command other creatures. There was one that represented invulnerability. There was one that represented control over time and immortality. Creation, destruction, command, time, invincibility. How many have I got? Am I missing one?
I got time, creation, destruction, command, vulnerability, and I did immortality. It's like a separate thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same.
Immortality time is, I think, the same one. And there was another that I am forgetting because it's been so long. That was the very first D&D game I ever ran. Those were collected, and they were used for that particular god who would become an archfey to ascend. So they're not necessarily around anymore, but it is implied that if a god ever directly intervenes in that similar way, then they would create something similar again. Also, when I made all of the demigods, most of whom I would say are probably not picking in the world today, I gave them each 2 of those powers. So there was one who could... Oh, it was presence. There was a presence stone. You could be anywhere.
Presence.
Instantly. It was a teleporty sort of omnipresent thing. So there was a demigod that they met in the first campaign who could create anything out of nothing and appear wherever they were and just kind of follow them around the campaign setting. And then there was another one who could create and destroy as they wished, and they warped and perverted everything around them. Because that's kind of what demigod meant to me, is I don't have the full gamut, but I have some things on a divine level, like Hercules and his strength.
So which one did Gilgamesh have?
Gilgamesh had command, and that is a thing that I have followed up with whenever Yuan Ti come into the picture. Yuan Ti in 5th edition are meant to be from this old civilization that once ruled everything, and they would very much like to again. So I have the Yuan Ti set up as the followers of Gilgamesh, and their job is to restore, their goal is to restore his empire, with either him reincarnated or resurrected in some way, or one of them, believing themselves to be his heirs and descendants, in control of everything. So Gilgamesh's deal, and Gilgamesh, his temple is still out there in the world. It is a place where you can go and adventure, and it's a very inhospitable place because it got smote. That was another of the gods' acts to intervene in the world, was to say, this Gilgamesh dude is awfully cocky. We need to correct this.
Okay, so he was smitten
Uh,
to death.
That is the prevailing theory. I have never perfectly said. His empire was destroyed in a night, and no one saw him since then, and the world descended into chaos immediately. Because it was a divine power that no longer was being applied, that was keeping everything in order. Some things you're going to find, as we discuss, I have not exactly penciled in everything, because A, I want to leave myself room to make a story in the future, and B, because I think other people may be able to come up with cooler stuff than me, so,
Cool.
as we continue to tell the play-by-post. Like, we have a Yuan Ti character that was just introduced as a member of the Cabal in the play-by-post server, and so I'm excited that I never said what happened to Gilgamesh, because she can have a belief, and she may not know if she's right or wrong. And canonically, neither do I.
Awesome. The next thing I was going to ask about was, so we've got here, so they created demigods, or lesser gods, really, by, like, breaking off pieces of themselves.
Yep.
You said that this included, like, demons and
Yep.
devils? So are those also, like, broken off pieces of a higher god?
So so the original 3 gods broke off aspects of themselves. Jolin was the god of law, let's say. He's dead now, but he was the god of law. Not lawful good, not lawful neutral, not lawful evil, just law.
Law. Yeah.
So he took the part of himself that was lawful evil, that was about conquering and domination and whatnot. He divided that from himself and created Rom, who, until the God's Plague happened, was in charge of all devils in the multiverse.
Which one was it?
Rom, R-A-U-M. Then Rom says, hey, I have this unquenchable need to subjugate and destroy things. I need soldiers. So Rom goes and creates devils and fiends and everything, because he can do that, because he's a god. And ditto for angels to a certain extent, like various celestial creatures and fiendish creatures were created by the various gods or lesser gods to serve their ends.
Gotcha.
And as you continue to water them down towards the player character races like Tieflings and Aasimar and Eladrin and whatnot, those are, well, Eladrin were a bad example of what I'm talking about, but they're not a direct product of divine decisions. They are the consequences of divine decisions. They're just, one end of the breeding spectrum when you make devils exist for eons.
Yeah.
You're going to wind up with the Pit Fiends, and you're going to wind up with the Baelors, and then you're going to wind up with the Tieflings and the Imps and the Cambions and Incubi and whatnot.
Gotcha. So my next question is kind of going back to our Divine Champions.
Yep.
You said that sometimes, obviously not every person that they choose to be a Divine Champion is going to be
Great.
Just an amazing person.
Yeah.
Or good at their job.
We're good at their job, is true.
And then sometimes their powers would be revoked and taken away from them. So 2 questions to go with that. When their powers are taken away, do they just go back to being a normal Joe on the street and they just don't have powers? Or do they die?
I have not decided that because it has not directly come up in gameplay of the stories I have already told. So whatever, I would be fine thinking it is a case-by-case basis. Say if you said if they're not particularly interested in doing their job, I'd like to think they lose their job pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And the consequences for that are probably different than being fired for overstepping or for being a bad employee. So I was hoping I would have to get to say this more often because I want to leave holes for people who contribute to our play-by-post server to fill in.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, and I don't care. Like, feel free to fill in that blank as it is narratively interesting.
Okay. I can definitely mark that down as something that, like, we can kind of think about.
Oh yeah, play with that.
I also had a question along the same lines, which is, what do they have to do to be removed from their post, other than just saying, I don't like this, I'm not going to do it?
The vague idea that I had given was, say, Rom starts whispering to the Divine Champion. Says, you know what? You are kind of governing all of this. But what if you ruled all of this? What if this wasn't the gods' world anymore? This wasn't the mortals' world anymore? This was your world, and everything operated on your rules. And they were tempted to defy use the powers granted by the job to defy the job description. And that could express itself in different ways, but it would come down in my mind to a misuse of power. And it could be for glory, it could be for more power, it could be trying to actually ascend, it could be for love, like using their powers to like make somebody love them, or like, I don't know. The different gods would consider different things stepping over the line, but if not everybody is happy with how you are expressing it in a compromisey kind of way, it's like no one's gonna be fucking thrilled, right? If that's the spirit of compromise is, well, they're not doing everything I want, but at least they're not doing the stuff I really hate.
Yeah.
And when you break that balance, out.
Cool. But different divine champions are appointed by different gods.
All divine champions are agreed upon by all the gods.
Okay.
They have to be kind of in the middle to qualify in the first place. And I would like to think that, you know, one of them was a great and accomplished paladin, and then one of them was a swineherd, and just all of a sudden had divine power.
Cool. So, does their removal also have to be unanimously agreed upon?
When they are no longer unanimously agreed upon, they start looking for somebody else. Because if taking my Rom example, the guy who wants to conquer all of existence with the power he's got, Rom is going to be fucking pleased, and you'll never get a unanimous vote if he's doing what Rom wants him to do. So it can't be a unanimous vote to kick him out, because someone's going to be happy with everything.
Of course.
Was that time enough for anyone to ask anything?
I haven't heard anyone else yet.
Did they respond to your post in the Discord?
Oh, hold on.
You hear the question, I'm gonna drink.
You said like the avatars? Good question. Rob left. Give it just a second.
Question, I'll come back.
Good question. Let me ask. So, Zephyr has asked a question about their job as a divine champion.
Okay.
and whether or not it draws any similarity to the Avatar. Again, Avatar, The Last Airbender, like kind of creating harmony and uniting folks.
That is a wonderful question. I haven't watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is a point of great contention
Sorry?
between me and many people. So the most recent, the final Divine Champion, used their power to basically quash conflict. He didn't make everybody friends, but have you ever been like fighting on the playground and then an adult comes around and just stops the fighting? And that doesn't mean you're getting along, that doesn't mean you're great friends all of a sudden. It's just, no,
So a mediator.
not in my house.
Yeah.
So certainly the Divine Champion can do that and has done that. During the tenure of the final Divine Champion, there was no war. Which, if we talk about my country of Estria at all during this conversation, was really sad to Estria, because Estria really does not like only ruling Estria. But they weren't going to go against the Divine Champion, so what are you going to do? Their job is also, the Divine Champion's job is also not to eradicate all evil from the world, because that would cause their demotion as well. Blackreach and the Blight, my Barovia and my Mordor analogs in the game, both continue to exist and in their own ways thrive under the rule of the Divine Champion. They just didn't come around and fuck other people's shit up. Maybe someone will know, there's an entity in Warhammer that is this big, shiny, golden guy with like this sun motif and a big-ass golden sword. That was my character image for the Divine Champion as they showed up in the campaigns where they were relevant. Just a big shiny guy. But
It's a
I
big
mean,
shiny guy.
the previous Divine Champions could have been, they could have looked like a stag, or they could have looked like a young girl, or an 8-eyeballed wheel of fire.
Biblically accurate
Sure.
Divine Champion.
Yeah. Could have been any of that. So in answer to the, I guess I'm answering the question by not answering the question. It is not the Divine Champion's duty to do that. But they are capable of it, and they have done it before. But as long as the material plane continues to exist and is not eradicated or irreparably changed, the Divine Champion is filling their job description.
So, to bring in language from Avatar, would you say that they are an agent of harmony?
The way that Rob thinks of harmony, no.
Cooperation. Peaceful coexistence.
Coexistence is a good word.
Okay.
Their primary function is to preserve the material plane.
We have another question from Steve, which is the time of the Divine Champion. Is it completely done?
The people would say no. They think, I mean, again, in the busiest port city in the world, people saw the red-haired Walter Durst, by the way. No one knew his name. He didn't introduce himself. He just walked up, touched the Divine Champion, and it died. Everyone just refers to him as the red-haired man, and because that's all anybody knew. And there was a time there where every ginger in the world was very suspect. And other people would come up and they would, make cults around themselves and say, "Oh, I am the red-haired man. Everybody worship me. I can kill the Divine Champion." And it went really well for them for a while, and that time is probably not yet done. The remaining gods are either flexing their power to gain power in the divine realms, or they are hiding from the still AWOL red-haired man out there in the outer planes. So they haven't really convened to promote another divine champion. It's still very possible for one to exist. And people are looking forward to the arrival of the next divine champion, and will probably accept a poor substitute on merit and need alone. But unless the red-haired man can be stopped, unless the God's Plague ends, then there will not be another actual divine champion.
So, actually, that brings up another question for me. Let me look at CST 7. So he said the divine champion needs gods to supply him with power. So before a divine champion can ascend, gods must ascend, which I feel like
Yeah.
kind of covered. They really just need to come out of hiding, I feel like, or stop being afraid of this man who can touch them and they die immediately.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, the amount of power given to a divine champion by several gods is still less than the power of an individual god. But if, say, let's use Egress. Egress is my goddess of family and motherhood and harmony, in whatever sense you see harmony, that's her. If she were to say, we really need a divine champion, I will give up enough of my power to make a divine champion as powerful as the world remembers. Then she's a leg down in whatever is going on in the outer planes.
Yeah.
Then one of the other gods can come raffle stomp her, and she's not going to do that. So there's nothing that prevents a single god from empowering a divine champion to affect things on the material plane, but their divine realms take priority and precedence. They're going to defend that before they bother with the material plane, and they're not going to risk giving up enough of theirs as an individual to make a divine champion if it puts them in a weakened state.
Okay, makes sense. We have another question, which is, and I believe that I can say that he is still around. So is the red-haired man still out there actively hurting divine people and gods? Or is he over and done and stopped?
That is something I have left ambiguous, because that was the aim of a campaign that never ended.
I see.
I want my world to move on, but I also don't have kind of the consensus from all of those players of, did they win? Did they lose? Did they wind up agreeing with him that the gods are actually kind of shit if they allowed a guy like Walter Durst to exist, so maybe we should wipe them out? Do we team up? Do we steal his power? Do we... Lots of things. And I don't know, but even if I did know, I don't think the people of the world would know.
Right.
And I care a lot more as a dungeon master about what the people of the world know and what they think and what they are, the decisions they're making based on their lack of information or their misinformation, than I do about what's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me a very bad person to be making a video like this.
Yes, we're here for the truth.
I will say that is a point that when a decision is made, it does not need to be controverted. But it has not been made yet. The red-haired man, Walter Durst's idea is that if he is allowed to exist, if he is a divine mistake, then the gods are not as good as they need to be to fulfill the role that they are fulfilling. And he would not want to stop until none were around. So, ultimately, because D&D kind of needs gods to exist to be a normal D&D setting, and we need to kind of run in a normal D&D setting for the purposes of this roleplay server, he will not succeed. But whether or not he is done at the time that we are playing in this server, I do not know yet.
Right. Cool. Do you guys have any other questions before I ask another one? Okay, nobody's typing or saying anything. So I will assume. Oh wait. To talk mortal history and political state of things and Estria.
Yeah, we will
Yeah.
get to that for sure.
It's on the list. I was going to ask, so if someone does become a divine champion, how do you prove that you are a divine champion? And not just someone saying, hey, I'm a divine champion now.
Well, it's a really easy thing to test because fuck around and find out.
Yeah. Fair.
My concept of the divine champion is they have just enough power. Like this is kind of the watermark that I put them at. They have just enough power that they can prevent or undo 9th level spells like the wish spell.
I heard that.
So the most powerful magic users in the world cannot out-magic them. The most powerful martial characters in the world cannot out-martial them. They have enough divine power to snap their fingers and just, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good, someone. Or a lot of someones. And actually, that might be a fair comparison, because Rob didn't know about Infinity Stones when he made the Shards of Divinity.
I mean,
so if you imagine the Divine Champion as doing stuff, maybe not that Thanos does in the comics, but that Thanos does in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that is Divine Champion. And let's face it, Thanos still wielding his sword in Endgame was not what someone who had Infinity Stones. That is the way that the Divine Champion plays. Is I have Genie like phenomenal cosmic power.
Yeah.
I am not going toe to toe with you. You are not going toe to toe with me. Question.
I feel like I can say yes to that. So it's just examples of Thanos, things that Thanos has done, like turning people to ribbons, turning back time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm your filter.
That is what I mean. The Divine Champion is not empowered with the kind of magic mortals use. The Divine Champion is powered with a sliver of godhood and everything that comes with that.
Yeah.
They can tamper with reality. They can planeswalk. They can, but I mean that's kind of negligence if they planeswalk, because then they're leaving behind their duty. But they could.
So do they get like a little piece of everything that each Shard of Divinity can do?
Yes.
Yep, there we go. They get a little bit of everything that the shards can do. That's cool. Good question. Do all of the shards still exist?
They were absorbed by the initial ascension. The entity on my pantheon called the Nameless One, because when this deity ascended, which canonically it's Stephen Roberts' player character from my first campaign, by the way.
Oh.
He did not really want godhood. He needed godhood to prevent a thing. So he ascended, he did the thing, and then he fucked off. But everybody knows there's another god out there. They just don't know what he's called or what he wants or any of that shit. So he's the Nameless One. He gets a token shrine in all of these different temples because nobody knows what he wants and they don't want to offend him.
So he used the shards to ascend.
Yes.
And then going back to the Thanos comparison, kind of like when he used the Infinity Stones to wipe half of all creation, the shards were their power was used up. And they just disappeared or broke?
No. He basically unified with them.
Oh, he like absorbed them and used their power to become
Yeah,
divine?
he's still got all that power. He just didn't do much with it.
I see.
But again, if someone wants to play with the Shards of Divinity idea again, it was my very first D&D idea, and I still think it's awesome. And I hope other people do too. It is still probably the best campaign I've run. All that would be required to make another one is for a god to overstep and do something that directly interfered with the material plane. Now, that would have divine consequences if someone did that, if someone broke the divine pact. The other gods would gang up and try and beat their shit down. So it's probably not going to happen many times in rapid succession. And the god would be permanently weakened by the attempt, because they're leaving something of themselves behind. But it's not impossible to happen again, based on the rules of the world.
I'm gonna note that down, as we just need a god to fuck around and find out.
That's exactly right. Pick one of the lesser ones. They don't know what they're doing. And there are a few gods that were formerly mortals. When I'm using the word divine in front of a lot of nouns, but there was once a divine barrier that said mortals cannot become gods, the number of gods is finite, and if the gods want to create more of themselves, then we're on this side of the barrier, and that can be done. When the Shards of Divinity were collected, that barrier was broken by the ascension of a mortal to godhood. And a few others figured out ways to mimic or repeat that act. The Gloam Mother is kind of one. Labiel is definitely one. Larapo is definitely one. Haven't quite decided on Cybris Edelon, whether or not she is or not. Mostly females, I notice. You know, women breaking the glass ceiling. I don't know. You didn't find that as funny as I hope you'd find that. But yeah, now it is possible for mortals to become gods. Noxus was the big one that did it. She demi-liched her way to divinity. I don't remember why I was saying that, but it is a possible thing now for mortals to become gods. With that, let's move on to a new topic, hopefully a shorter one, because this has already taken longer than I thought it would, but I'm enjoying it.
I had one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when a god dies, they lose their power and they die, because Walter has bumped shins with them. Do the lesser gods that broke off from them and kind of were created from and or are feeding from their powers, do they also die as a consequence, or do they remain in the world?
They do not die as a consequence. They were carved off completely, have taken on a life of their own, and are doing absolutely their own thing. There is no connection other than fraternity, other than parentage between those entities anymore.
Oh, I did want to... Oh, sorry. What, Steve?
Bottom of this whiskey bottle.
Good question. Alright, Steve brings up in the OneNote, our pantheon has several gods that are noted as either increasing or decreasing in power currently. How does this happen? Is it related to worship from followers or any other things?
So a popular thing in a lot of D&D settings is that the gods depend upon mortals to give them their power. Their worship empowers the deities. That is not how it works in my head. And a lot of that probably spawns from my beliefs about actual divinity outside of role-playing games. I think that the gods are the gods regardless of what mortals do. The whole material plane could be erased and the gods would be fine. They'd probably have a lot less fun, but they would be fine. The way that they are rising or waning in power, most of the ones that I have listed as waning are hype. They don't want to stick their head up and get red-haired man down to nothing. So they're just keeping a low profile. They're not interacting with the material plane. They're not giving their position away. I see Steve is asking things or saying things.
He was kind of confirming what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that are on the rise are in my mind mostly ones that have overlap at some level in their portfolios with the ones that are dead, the erased gods. And so, by virtue of the fact that no one is keeping them in their box, they're just kind of achieving their potential.
I see. So, like, if a major god that spawned to younger gods is dead, then the younger gods are now the only gods in charge of the things that they were spawned from, and they're therefore growing in power.
That's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in a more materialistic sense, any servants of that god that survive the god's plague are, you know, like actual, like heavenly military might and resources are now at another god's disposal to come around and pick up. Because just because the god is dead doesn't mean their servants are, or their palaces are, or their plane is, their home is. So, you know, suddenly there's free real estate, and certain people jumped on it and moved in, and are better for it.
Free real estate.
I don't... My world is weird. Why do people want to play it? For anyone who can't hear what's going on, my brother is asking questions.
It's still possible. Is it still possible for someone to ascend to godhood?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not easy.
I agree, and I will repeat your statement that it does seem like something that villains would really want to be trying to do.
Oh, God, yes. You...
Especially our Hierophant.
Yes. Especially with his relationship with Noxus.
With Noxus. Yeah.
And that's I think that's why most people follow Noxus if they follow her at all, is, okay, she did it, she figured something out. I want to know what she knew. I want to hear from her directly. I want to find her spell book. I want to find every item that she ever touched in life, and I want to try and duplicate what she did.
Thank you for just telling me exactly why he wanted this one guy's spell book.
There you go. I want Noxus's hairbrush. Brush my hair with, because that was the hairbrush that brushed the hair of a potential god. I need Noxus's bidet. Steve is saying things, I'm just trying to fill the time.
Yeah, so from what I understand, for someone to become a divine champion, there has to be at least a somewhat unanimous agreement from the gods. All of the ones that are currently...
There would need to be a majority agreement.
Yes, a majority agreement, or is it possible for one god to just say, a lot of my power is going into this, to this one person?
It is possible, I hope I said this earlier, it is possible to do that. A god would probably be sacrificing their position to do so.
They're basically opening themselves up to be attacked or absorbed by other gods and losing their race in the other concerns that the Pantheon is currently involved in.
And race not in the D&D term of, like, races and classes and things. They're losing the metaphorical race of getting ahead. Because gods and their godhood is more important than whatever the hell is going on in the material plane. So they would likely not weaken themselves to the point, because not all the gods get along. Even the gods that are good or lawful or chaotic would probably jump at the chance to take somebody else's whole deal over. And while I don't attribute worship of one god to another to be... I guess I've just always thought of it this way. I've never said it before or written it down anywhere. If a god is capable of overwhelming another god, they are twice the god, in my mind. That doesn't have to be true. Like certain other aspects of my world, for it to be my world, they have to be true. Gods don't intervene in the material plane without consequences, kind of stuff. But if Egress were to empower Divine Champion to do some good on the material plane, and then she got glomped by Prey, one of the chaotic evil devils out there, then there would be no more Egress, and Prey would be way more powerful and start doing some real shit. So, yeah. So surprised that people have listened to this for an hour. I noticed Steve is the one asking all the questions. Do you want to trade chairs?
Right. No, it's fine. I'm
so sorry you have to be. How you doing?
Mhm. A good point. I would say the limit is being able to do it, but I will confirm. So it is possibly more realistic to try and become a god yourself than to seek to become a divine champion.
Certainly, if you want to have control over whether or not it happens, yeah. Because you are probably not going to be capable of living such a neutral life by force of will
Yeah.
to qualify for being a god. Like,
Right.
none of the divine champions ever set out to do it. And that is bad news for Barin, who thought, I want to be the next divine champion.
Yeah.
I think wanting to be a divine champion disqualifies you from being a divine champion at a certain level. But God, the world needs one. So if you can figure that out, good for you. Or if you can get enough of if you can figure out who the surviving gods are and get on enough of their good side, it's not impossible. But I wouldn't say it's easy at all to become a god the normal way, because that is some beyond 20th level character shit. Like, step 1 is become a 20th level character, and then you have to actually unlock some secrets of the universe. But you are in more control of it if you pursue that than just hoping that you're the one in however many 0.6 billion that gets picked.
Yeah, so yeah, Steve is saying more along the lines of demons, archfey that may already exist in the world as NPCs, or a certain Hierophant. I would never become a divine champion, Jesus Christ. Oh, the mage from the backstory.
The mage from the
Wow.
backstory. Oh,
Or the voice.
Morpheus.
Yeah.
The voice is an interesting thing. If you are listening to this, I hope you are qualified to know. Actually, I think it's somewhat possible that I might post this somewhere where people can play it. We are not telling anyone what the voice is at this time, whether it is actually a god or not. It is a prevailing theory in Dame High that it is a god that no one has ever heard of, some new god since post God's Plague god.
Yeah.
Whether or not someone broke the divine barrier again, or there's a widely whispered belief that Elspeth is just really gullible, and someone is just using telepathy to speak to her in her mind, and she is treating that entity as a god and taking its word as divine revelation. But I will probably say it is easier for already powerful beings to become deified than people who had to start off as babies and grow up. Like, it's probably easier for a pit fiend than, or a Baylor, for a Baylor than it is for a level 1 fighter to rise to the point where they would need to rise to be divine.
Interesting. Alright, we're pretty much done with gods.
Cool.
I only had one more little thing I wanted to address.
Okay. And then we'll talk about hopefully simpler topics. But I'm glad that we spent this much time on divinity, because these rules, which I didn't feel coming into this were that many, but it took us an hour to talk about them, are the main thing that makes my world my world. You're not going to find me whining about what elf culture is like if you play in my world. You can determine that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
What you are going to find me caring about is, can gods come here? And what happens if they do? And how easy it is to become a god? And what ways there are to kill a god? Because no gods died ever until the God's Plague happened.
The only other thing I wanted to ask about is, you mentioned something about a divine champion splitting their power and giving it to various others?
Yes. Once the divine champion has been thusly empowered, they have that power. They can do whatever they want with it. So when the gods come along, the gods are capable of ripping that power away and doing something else with it. But otherwise, it's theirs to do with as they please. And unless it contacts the God's Plague, divine power is not erased. It is just appropriated or reinvested. So that was the beginning of that campaign that I ran, called the Divine Spark, was a infinitesimal fragmentation of infinite power was dispersed to everyone in the capstan that day. And then they fought. They were like sent to the reaches of the world, and they started, like, Highlander?
Yes.
They started, like, finding each other out in the world and battling to see who got to keep the little bit of power. And when they were all to come back together, and one individual, there can only be one, would come back with all of the power of the Divine Champion, they would be a Divine Champion, or potentially try to ascend.
Yes. Yes. So, if the red-haired man is still at large, is that Highlander War, which we are unsure if it has a name, is it still happening?
If he's out there, yes.
If he is out there.
And if he is out there and it's still going on, he could find the potential candidates and end it. Because there is a finite amount of power that the Divine Champion had to disperse between all those people. That power could be erased.
So, from my understanding, so the fragments that have been scattered,
Yep.
If they were all collected, another divine champion could be made that way
Yes.
without the gods.
Correct. That is actually a good loophole, a good caveat. Enough power exists in the world to create another divine champion. Now, that said, this is deeper than I wanted to go. When the divine champion split the power, the God's Plague followed that power into the vessels that it reached. Some were able to suppress that or defeat that and maintain the divine power in spite of the God's Plague. Some people were consumed by the God's Plague, empowered by the God's Plague, and lost their divine spark. So, not 100% of a divine champion's power is still up for sale, because it was consumed by people who were consumed by the God's Plague. But 75% of a divine champion's power is still a divine champion that nobody on this plane can touch. So I hope that answers the question.
So we could have one diet divine champion that shows up if they collect
Yeah.
about 75%. Yes.
And I mean,
divine champion light. Yes.
To the mortal eye, there would be no difference, right?
Yes.
It's like infinity versus infinity minus 20 bajillion. Like, you know what I mean?
The only ones that would know the difference would be the gods that did not create
like,
this person.
He's about half full. Well, actually, I think he's half empty.
Beyond that, the only other way for a new divine champion to show up would be the gods making that choice, that very difficult choice for them.
In all fairness, since we're doing this thought experiment now,
it's what we wanted to know.
If a single god were to intervene, compromising their own hold on their own power and placing a shard of divinity on Earth once again, in Erelais once again, a single actual shard of divinity is enough to make you divine champion equivalent, but not in every way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you would have absolute power
over one thing,
even over the divine champion in one area.
Yeah.
Like, if the command shard were to appear again and someone were to get the command shard, divine champion shows up and says, "Yo, bro, what the fuck?" And you say, "Hey, you work for me now." He'd say, "Yes, sir, I work for you now." Or a shard of divinity with the ability to obliterate were to come into contact, and the divine champion shows up and says, "Yo, bro, what the fuck?" You say, "And you don't exist," and he doesn't exist. So don't create shards of divinity in my world callously, recklessly. They are not meant to be quantified by game terms. They are meant to be broken as hell.
So that will need to be a much as the creation of a divine champion must be the unanimous decision of the gods.
You might as well create another god in my campaign if you put a divine shard in.
I was going to say the creation of a divine shard, as far as like the server goes, should be a unanimous decision amongst all DMs, I think.
Yeah.
If it does happen. Like, I'm not just going to pop in there one day and make a new divine shard in the Creeping Forest for no reason.
She says, rubbing her hands together below the camera.
Stop ratting me out.
Okay, let's cover a new topic. I'm going to try and hit just a couple of places that are very important to me in the world map.
Can I have some more whiskey before you get started?
It's in my car.
Oh, never
but
mind.
Yes.
I don't know.
You know, I'll probably want some more too. I'm enjoying myself. This is going on forever. And I'm continuing to drink, and I haven't really stopped, so why would I stop now? Could you see maybe if they have any more questions and field them while I get it, and then I'll be back with it?
Yes.
Okay.
Alright, guys, this is my show now. Just kidding. I don't know anything. I'll be back. Cool. Noxus for sure. Yeah. I mean, Okay, so voluptuous is not always equal to hot. That's fair. I feel like this chair is really small, so I feel like it's not small, it's low to the ground, so I feel really short. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying Noxus because that's the one that I'm like reading up on right now for the Hierophant. And they're oh yeah. The question is who is the hottest god? Noxus might be mine. I don't know what Rob's answer will be. Yes.
I like having a secretary for all of my questions about my campaign world. This is great. I don't know for anything. Just deputize Katie to answer all concerns.
That is a really interesting theory.
A game theory.
Wow. Huh?
Hmm?
So Zephyr has a really interesting theory
Yeah.
that I believe is answering a question that you have not answered yet
Okay.
and chosen not to answer,
Okay.
which is that the voice is the nameless one.
That's interesting.
It was like, well, no one else is doing shit. And, you know, becoming the voice would also probably allow this nameless one to maintain some air of anonymity as well
Yes.
by taking on the facade of another god. I think that is a hard could be.
Because, again, I think this is interesting enough that I might put this places where players in the server could see it. Zephyr, we could have that conversation another time. My general thought is, I do not like to... Because the Nameless One is technically a player character ascended to godhood, I don't like to make calls for a player character without that character's player's input. But I personally don't hate that idea. This is ice, this is whiskey. So.
Alright.
So, places in my world that are important. I want to talk about the Blight. I need to talk about North Shore to a certain extent because that is where we are playing. But North Shore is fairly pedestrian, in my opinion, compared to the places around it, and that's kind of the point of North Shore, is, it's normal, it is relatively safe, but it's surrounded by these wonderful places that you can go that are of greater consequence, and where you can go adventuring, but you have somewhere to come home to that is more or less fine, right? So the history of the world that we've already discussed ties into the history of the Blight. The Blight is so far away from North Shore it doesn't really figure into our story. But I mentioned the demigods before. There was one of them named Ilvarden. Ilvarden was the first male elf. And elves in normal D&D, drow are a matriarchy. Elves are a patriarchy. And in my canon, that is flipped. The first elf created was a female, and everybody followed her. And the first male elf created was a colossal dick. He had the ability to... The power... Again, my demigods had the power of 2 of the shards of divinity. He was the one that had the power to create and obliterate, which gave him the ability to warp and change. So he took basically everything good in existence and made a bad version of it. He was the one who was responsible for making ogres and trolls and ettins instead of giants. He was the one that was responsible for making wyverns instead of dragons. He was the one responsible for making orcs instead of humans and elves, and he made goblins that have halflings. Like, he went and just on a spree. That is not to say that all of these creatures are still evil in the world today as a whole, but they definitely got started out on a bad foot. And people and races with long memories may remember them as being as bad as they were at their inception. Ilvarden had a mountain that he did business out of, and his sheer presence corrupted the world around him. And I'm not going to pretty this up too much. It was a Mordor analog. There was a Dark Lord in a corrupted, basically uninhabitable land, surrounded by all the bad things in the world. To the north was Aldrengr, which is where the elves are, and they made it their business to keep the Blight contained. To the west, and it's in the southeast corner of the continent, so there is only really a north and a west. To the north were the elves, and they stopped shit. To the west were some mountains that provide a natural defensive barrier, as well as favored terrain to a bunch of really badass satyr warriors and gnome illusionists who kept them at bay there. And by the virtue of these natural defenses, the Blight has been contained for eons. It is still the duty of the elves to contain the Blight. It is still the duty of the satyrs and gnomes that live in Erelais to keep the Blight contained. And it has been, and it always will be, in a kind of, I was writing this before...
Sorry, Steve, what was that? It is one of the places where the gods intervened. And that is why it happened. No, incorrect.
It is completely fucked up just because a demigod made it his business to fuck that place up.
It was done on purpose by a demigod. There we go.
Just, he is so antithetical to natural...
Ilvarden.
Yes.
Is he dead?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's dead as fuck.
Some of the OG heroes of the world came and ruined his day. However, he got reincarnated during the time of the Shards of Divinity, and his reincarnation was one of the main players fighting for those shards. Anyway, the Blight still exists. It doesn't have its a Dark Lord on a demigod level anymore, and the monsters there in kind of an abyss sort of way mostly content themselves ruining each other's day, and the orc hordes and the hobgoblin armies and all the other kind of organized bad things of the world kind of war for supremacy in there, and only when one of them really gets a leg up do they think about trying to take on the elves or cross the mountains. But it's definitely not a place people go. North of that is Blackreach. Blackreach was just kind of the valley between Aldrengr, the Edelon forest, the nation of the elves and the forest there, which is named after Sivris Edelon, the elf deity. It was just kind of the area north of that, between that and the Rhinefang Mountains for a while. And then some nasties of the world, primarily things that came up from beneath. Drow, Duragar, Umberhooks, and, the nasty things of the world came up there and were trying to make their homes in the mountains, and they were warring with giants. And then humans came along, and they said, you know what, this is, once again, free real estate, let's conquer this and rule this sumbitch. And they did, for the most part. there was a couple of brothers that conquered it, and they did not get super along. And both of them made a dark bargain to achieve their personal aims. And neither of them quite went the way that they wanted it to. The ultimate result is one of them was cursed to be the OG lycanthrope, and another one of them used an arrow designed to kill anything, which is still out there in the world, by the way. There is a god capable, there's an arrow capable of killing a divine champion out there in the world, made by a deity for the purpose of killing a deity. In a real, lapse of judgment. Was used to kill an archfey that had tried to low-key just come into the world and not do anything. It just was a big fan of the material plane. It was just trying to exist. And it was the white stag. That's how it manifested itself. And so people would occasionally see this white stag, and these idiot humans got the idea, oh, it'd be so awesome to kill that fucker. And so, well, we can't kill it by conventional means. I don't know what's going on. She says, well, you know what? I'm going to make a deal. I'm going to get an arrow that can kill anything, and we're going to go hunt this thing. And he did kill it, and the blood of an archfey being murdered tainted the ground and cursed it forever, and that is where Blackreach came from. Also, the guy that killed it drank the blood of the archfey and became the OG vampire. He is still alive. He is still bebopping around in Blackreach.
What's his name?
Robert Donbanar. He is the Lord of Arrow Hall, all the way on the eastern end of Blackreach. He is really inspired by Strahd von Zarovich. I know his story pretty well front to back. Him and his brother. He did get lightly named after myself, because I never do a self-insert, but he's Rodbert, he's not Robert. And Dom Minar is basically the monarch in a language I forget. And he has kind of succumbed to a general malaise. Like, he's not up to too much evil, he's just tired of still existing. But he's too powerful to die. So he has just kind of let his land go to shit, and it is filled with all of the things that everybody would want to run out of civilized world. It's like, well, we don't want orcs here. We don't want trolls here. We don't want giant spiders here. We don't want necromancers here. We don't want flesh golems here. So they, if they don't succeed in killing them, they run them off, and nobody runs them off in Blackreach. So yeah, it's a terrible, awful place filled with all of the monsters that I couldn't justify being anywhere else in my world. Hags and shit. That is generally Blackreach. It is a terrible, awful place where everything terrible and awful and bad can hide, and where everything with sunlight sensitivity is a-okay because it's always overcast. It's always sunny in Philadelphia. It's never sunny in Blackreach. Caldor, once Rex Terra, is the predominantly human kingdom of the West. They used to be 4 different duchies, all under the king who is called the Rex. So kind of like you would have like Julius Caesar, you would have Solomon Rex and whatnot. And he is still called the Rex to this day. Those duchies have now either united under the primary one, so it's not Rex Terra anymore, it's Caldor, or they have declared their independence, which we will get to Estria in a bit. But North Shore was once part of a duchy called Lustra, before Lustra basically broke off the continent by magic and got pushed away. Because they didn't want to have anything to do with what was going on in Erelais anymore. So Lustra is now a kind of Arctic analog continent up north beyond everything that is habitable, where frost giants, white dragons, and Vikings live. And Kaldor is the main human kingdom. They, not that long ago, were in a turf war with the elves of Aldranger. It was orchestrated by forces beyond those two kingdoms. It was set up. They were set up to go to war with one another, but they did cave. And humans and elves from Kaldor and Aldranger still have a strained relationship because of that. Because, everybody knows somebody who was killed by one of those guys, or someone from there, right? The basis of the war was Fae creatures, pixies, Eladrin, dryads, naiads, nixies, kelpies, and the like, were kind of out of control, and they were at a place where they were accidentally or purposefully, depending on your perspective, causing a lot of problems for everyone everywhere. The Nameless One's ascension helped deal with that long ago, but it never quite stopped. People would go missing, people were replaced by changelings, people would lose time for long amounts of time, and generally kind of ruin day-to-day society. So the elves were trying to shelter the Fae creatures, the humans were trying to drive them out, and in the midst of that became like, whose land is whose lands anyway? Where do these Fae get to go? We don't really want them here. Well, we don't really want them here either, but we need to put them somewhere. So maybe this neutral territory. No, that's not neutral territory. That's my territory. Fuck you. And war started. That is the only national war in recent history. However, there have been other intrigues. The country of Estria used to be the hope for humanity, the pride of Kaldor. It was once a duchy. That is where the Arcane Research Collective operates out of. Their headquarters is in a city named Isara. I am genuinely impressed with myself remembering all this stuff from 7 years ago. Isara is home to the Barrel Tower, which is a big cerulean gemstone tower that is bigger on the inside, utilizing Time Lord technology, where the collective research out of the Arcane Research Collective, commonly abbreviated as ARC, is an effort of human mages to learn and propagate magic. Humans decided, not too long after their arrival in the world, that every other race can do magic shit, but we can't. And you know what? If they decided to wipe us out tomorrow, they could probably do it, because we can't do magic shit. Tieflings know innate spellcasting. Elves have some innate magical abilities. Eladrin certainly do. Tieflings do. Aasimar do. Gnomes do. I mean, even gnomes, man! They know magic and humans don't. So humans said, we have got to learn magic any way we can, and we have to teach everyone who possibly can learn it. So what they did was they started training... Are they saying stuff? I see green lights.
Steve is just making noises. You're fine.
They can't control. They have tried. They have tried to control who is born a sorcerer. They can, to some extent, control who gets to make a pact as a warlock. But the main thing they can control is everyone who is smart enough to figure magic out gets drafted into the Arcane Research Collective. Now, it's not like being drafted into the US military. There are perks. You get to be like a grade A 1% citizen if you join the collective. Everyone else is beneath you. It's kind of a little bit of a fucked up culture. But their inception as the collective was, we need to preserve humanity, and there is no way for us to do that if magical warfare starts if we can't do magic. So they have this ritual called the Proving, where basically anyone with a 13 intelligence or higher passes the Proving. They can deduce this magical equation that proves that they are magically capable. So if you have a 13 AC or a 13 intelligence or higher as a human who the Estrians have access to, you get drafted into the research collective, and you get told you are better than everybody else. Everybody else exists to serve you. You are going to be the savior of the world one day. Please learn this spellbook. We need you to be able to cast Wish as soon as possible, even if it takes all your life.
Yeah, major Soren lore here.
Yes, Soren is from Estria.
Yes.
Sorcerers are not loved by Estrian society because they cannot control you achieving your potential. Warlocks are not loved because you're having to give something up to be able to have magical power. And bards are... Estria doesn't really know what to do with bards. You can't breed a bard, you can't school a bard, you can't make a bard better.
What do you mean
right?
you can't breed a bard?
It's all... The bards can breed, you can't breed a bard, okay? But if you're smart enough to figure it out, they can teach you magic. You know, not everyone is equally applicable. And Estrian society is actually organized around preserving certain bloodlines that are particularly magically adept. And there are houses that are basically Estrian nobility because they have been magically capable for forever.
Like it runs in their...
It's in the genes.
blood, yeah.
And for the people who are dungeon masters and NPC masters in the server, if a child of one of these houses is a disappointment, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
And they either try to mask that or kick them out of the family, or like shuffle them off somewhere. Estria decided to declare its autonomy some decades ago. A bunch of mages went to the border of what they consider their land and literally, like, split the earth. They dug a big canal between Kaldor and them and said, you do not want to come across this canal because we know magic and your ass don't. And see you in 100 years when we are going to rule everything. An unsubstantiated claim so far. But Estrian life revolves around, with the industriousness of humans, and that is a thing that I cannot emphasize enough in my world. Like the long-lived races like elves, they will spend their 200s just backpacking around Europe, right? Like, it's like, I've got so much time, I'm in no hurry to do anything. Humans are incredibly industrious with the small time that they are given. And an entire country is doing nothing but trying to figure out how to make humans more genetically predisposed and to become wizards. And to make going from a level 1 wizard to a level 20 wizard as simple as possible.
So you might have families, sorry to break, you might have families that, like, especially the ones that, like, have more of an aptitude for it, that, like, they would have children and immediately start training them
Oh, yes.
to be wizards,
Like,
as soon as they can.
You're learning arcane equations as soon as you can do math. Like, you are...
Gotcha.
They don't care if you spell disestablishmentarianism correctly. They care if you can cast magic missile and hit the target.
Oh, Soren. That 12 intelligence really got you, bud.
That is some good world building.
That
Right there.
that is. We have many questions from Steve about this area whenever you're ready for them.
Steve knows the most about this area, which is surprising me that he's the one with the questions. So the last things I will say about Estria is they are immediately to North Shore's west. There's basically nothing between North Shore's western extremity and the canal that was dug between Estria and the main. There is the Coppertop Mountain, which, by the way, is not named after a metal. There used to be a big-ass copper dragon that sat up there, so that is why it's called Coppertop Mountain.
Any connection to Copper Clinch?
It might still be there. No, actually. Copper Clinch is really just because he saves every penny, so he is a penny pincher, so he is a Copper Clinch. That was his family's name before he became so fat, because he ran thin. Also, I don't know where else to drop this in. Copper Clinch, his deity is dead, and he has no actual clerical power anymore. He has no place to draw his divine power from. He's shopping around for a new god. He died in the events of the God's Plague, and nobody knows that. But he is Mr. Prepared, Mr. Magically Savvy, Mr. Contingency Plan. So he has a basement full of simulacrums that are scheduled to wake up if he were ever to die. So this is not the first Daggered Copper Clinch that is ruling Dame Hythra right now, and it may not be the 6th. He plans on being around for a long time.
Oh my god. Huh. That's a piece of lore.
If you have the resources to cast Simulacrum, or to pay someone to cast Simulacrum for you, that is probably the first 100 things you do.
I can't wait for you to, I hope that you will go through and read this, because this is absolutely unhinged.
That is how my world works. Thank you for understanding. So the last thing I'll say about Estria before you get to tell me Steve's questions about them is that Estria... There's lots more I could tell you about the Barrel Tower, but it's probably not going to come up in the play-by-post server. Is that it is their goal to rule everything by magical force. They are only interested in fostering human progression with magic. So they are kinda racist at their core. They will absolutely cooperate with other races in the name of making human mages more capable. They don't mind learning from an elf how to make humans better at magic. But if it comes down to it, they will choose human over elf every time. They wear different colored robes. I was looking for this article in anticipation of questions, so please don't ask me this. Different ranks and different specializations in the organization have different colored robes. The main thing that you need to know for the purposes of the server is that red ones are the special agents. They go like a high-level evoker, or a high-level war mage, or a high-level blade singer with a very special mission and a license to kill is going to have a red cloak. Most of the other colors are probably not going to be sent on international relations, diplomatic missions, or covert ops. So, red is the most common one you're going to see out in the wider world. And very much like the Red Wizards of Thay, if you see one, you are probably not going to want to fuck with them. Because they have to be very qualified to wear that color. I will now accept questions.
Okay. So I've had it corrected that a lot of this is not necessarily questions, just things that we want clarified and said out loud. Go back up here.
Oh, have they been typing? Gosh.
Yes. We got Steve coming in the staff chat. Probably to
Good
keep
old
from
Steve.
talking over you.
Steve is the only person out there on the planet as excited about Estria as I am.
I mean, this is a lot of like direct sword lore right here.
Oh yeah,
So,
I was so thrilled when he made this character. I've been playing it really cool.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to have anything to do with the Arcane Research Collective in my games, because they're racist pricks.
Yeah. And I will just say it as a one-off. Ivaren would like a giant spider as a pet. This is kind of
Okay.
going back to the Elven Forest. We're just gonna let that one slide.
I will kill it as soon as I see it, but you can have one.
Um,
Probably everyone will.
We did want a note to ask about the Silver Swarm.
Okay. Do I need to talk about them now, or do we have questions about Estria?
We can save that.
Okay.
Also Sintra.
Yes, we need to know about Sintra.
Let's
Really
see.
quick, Sintra is really easy. Sintra is the city that is connected to every major nation in the world, except North Shore and Estria, because they departed from Kaldor in the past. It is the seat of diplomatic relations for all of Erelais. That's where the council meets. That's where the melting pot of culture is. It has stood for time immemorial and will probably be standing at the end of time as well. If you are a Critical Role fan, it's Iman. You know, if you are a Star Wars fan, it is Coruscant, but just one city.
Yeah.
That's not to say that it never has problems, but it is to politics what Daneheit is to commerce. It is the place. That was Sintra. So I believe we have 2 NPCs that in Daneheit play by post server right now who are emissaries from Sintra. They are from the political place, and the Whipstaffs, who normally don't care about anybody else but them, are very interested in currying favor. Because if North Shore were to ever stop being a meritocracy and start being more of a monarchy, if any individuals were wanting to be in charge of North Shore, they would want a seat at the table in Sintra, and people from Sintra would be the ones they would have to impress.
Cool. I believe we also wanted to confirm kind of the hierarchy of sorcerers versus wizards versus warlocks, in that sorcerers are kind of like army grunts and frontliners.
Not necessarily. So you are a second-class citizen Estrian society values magic above all, and race second, unfortunately. If you are a non-magically capable human, you are better off than a non-magically capable elf. But if you are a magically capable elf, you are better than every human that can cast magic. So it's divided upon magical capability first, race second. In the broad category of magically capable, sorcerers in the eyes of Estria are as good as they want to be. It is based on their charisma. It cannot be taught. It cannot be schooled. It cannot be fostered. They're going to achieve or fail to achieve their potential no matter what anyone around them does. So they're going to spend more time, money, and effort treating well and empowering the people whose progress can be measured, like wizards, instead. So you're not bad off if you're a sorcerer in Estria. The country just doesn't really know what to do with you. So you're gonna get your own house, and you're gonna get your own car, and you're gonna probably get laid before you're 25, and do all this stuff, but you're not gonna get a grant from the government, you're not gonna get a high-paying job, you're not going to have a promotional track like a wizard would. These are weird analogies, but I hope they land.
It does. It does. It lands for me at least.
Warlocks are worse than wizards.
Are
Because-
warlocks like better than sorcerers though?
Sorry. Warlocks are worse than sorcerers.
Oh.
Because, they've got no stamina. They can cast 2 spells a day. And they had to give something up to get it. They're not naturally talented. They're not teachable. They sacrifice something to get some magical power, which gives them a lot of status in Estria because they have magical power now, and that puts them above everybody that doesn't. But they would have to continue making deals. They would have to continue seeking out power. They would have to continue giving things up and sacrificing shit to gain any further measure of power, and that's not Estria's business model.
Yeah.
By the way, any non-mage class, druids, rangers, paladins, clerics, fuck those guys.
Hey.
You're depending on somebody else for your power. You're depending on something else for your power outside of yourself, outside of your intellect and your being. Estria does not. Estria's goal is to do the Noxus thing. They want to make all of humanity nigh divine. They do not want to depend on anyone else. If Estria was low-key excited when the Gods Plague happened, it's, yes, we're not going to depend on the fucking gods anymore. All of these people who are defending themselves by the power of the gods are going to be defenseless now. We finally have the leg up that we have always wanted. Let's, initiate phase B now.
So you said they were low-key excited about the God's Plague, so almost like a science versus religion thing.
Yes, very much so.
Neat.
You will not find anybody in upper echelon Estrian society that is devoutly religious. They believe in the gods. They just think they can take them if they have another couple hundred years.
Gotcha.
They're wrong, but that's what they think.
Yeah.
They think the time of the gods will end, and they want to be ready.
So we were also wanting to confirm in that Estria is similar to they, in that no magic is off limits.
Yeah, they don't advertise it outside of their national borders. And they don't always parade it through the streets. But in the Barrel Tower, behind closed doors, in your own laboratories, anything goes. No progress is bad progress.
Yes. For anyone who likes Dragon Age, this is a major parallel to Teventer.
Yep.
Yes. So yeah, they're not gonna say, yeah, we do necromancy. It's cool.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to test the effectiveness on your fireball on a fire immune demon, and you want to summon one, and then you manage to kill it and want to bring it back from the dead and do it over again, cool. That's just being good with your resources. That's resource management,
Yes. Also, some confirmation on other colors of robes.
Ask
Black
me
robes.
later.
Okay.
Is Steve offering this?
Yes, he said
Okay,
black robes are
Steve-
the teachers and ambassadors.
Steve may actually have my notes from the old game that I can't remember, so go ahead and say what he said.
That black robes, if they wear those, they are teachers and ambassadors, which would also be the Valafars.
Be the what?
The Valafar, the two that are in Damhide as the ambassadors.
The Valafar.
I think that's their names, right? Am I wrong
They're
about
not
who the
from
Valafars
Estria,
are?
they're from Sintra, right?
Yeah. What? Maybe not. No, the Valafars are from Sintra.
There we go.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Black. If you think of the whole nation as Hogwarts, black robes are the professors. Is how I thought of it. Okay. What was the next color you said?
He also said that he thinks that white robes are the heads of families.
I believe that's right. I think the white robes are the ones with a seat at the table in the Arcane Research Collective, and that is almost synonymous with the representative of each of the houses that are the nobility.
The nobles.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the oldest person. It is always the most magically capable person from those houses, and they each have a particular school of magic. There's 8 of them, and I think there's 8 magical schools. If I'm wrong about the number, then the number is still synonymous, right? Equivalent. And each house has a specialty, and each one of them has produced an archmage over the centuries. And there's one archmage who's in charge of things right now. It is a Trevina. House Trevina has the archmage in charge.
Yep.
Which Steve, I'm sure, just said.
Yep.
There we go.
Just said that.
Which you are friends with Bristol. Bristol had the original Trevina, who was not a magical person way back in the day, back at the time of the Shards of Divinity, because that was that campaign. If you haven't noticed, if you play a campaign with me long enough, you become canon.
Yeah. None of my characters ever made it
Well,
that
it's
far.
not your fault that a lot of the campaigns you played with me in very quickly.
I tried.
Any other questions on Estria? I can talk about the Ember Isles a little bit, and then I'm pretty much good.
Let me see. Yes.
Okay. Yes, there are questions, or yes, I should move on.
Yes. What about the time scale?
The what?
We have a question from Zephyr, which is, what is the timeline between, like, when the Shards of Divinity happened to the Divine Champion dying?
Like the most recent Divine Champion dying in Dame Hype?
The most recent one? Yes.
Long ass time. Like centuries, plural.
Hundreds of years.
It is no elf living. Dad remembers the Shards of Divinity.
Yeah, so, based on current day, when did the Divine Champion die?
Steve and I had extensive conversations on this before this server began, because he was involved in the Shards of... Well, wait, the Shards or the Divine Spark? Sorry, I name a lot of my campaigns after divine shit. So are we asking about the crystallized embodiments of power that were collected and propelled the Nameless One to godhood? Or are we asking about when the Divine Champion shattered and went into a bunch of people?
That one.
Very short amount of time. Measurable in years, but less than 5. I think the canonical answer that we operated on to create the server was 2 years. So, in living memory of everyone that is alive and has object permanence in the world.
Not as many people as you would think.
Yeah, but... So, very recent, but long enough that it doesn't feel brand new. Like, the short-lived races are getting used to the fact that we have to figure shit out on our own now, and that's okay.
The cult that follows the red-haired man, is it still an active presence in Dayam Hythe or anywhere else?
So, that cult is called the Beatific Hand. The Beautiful Hand. Yes, it is very much active, and it will probably be active for untold centuries from now. A mortal, to their mind, a mortal rose up with the power to kill gods. That has forever changed history. There is never not going to be a cult to this dude. I was toying with this idea, and this is another thing that I haven't completely filled in the blanks on, so if y'all have a strong feeling on this matter and want to do something with it, please run with it. I started to toy with the idea, if worship did empower gods, especially in a god-like world, a lot of people started worshiping the red-haired man. If he were to start to take on aspects of divinity or to associate himself as a god or be worshipped as a god, what would he do to himself and what would he do to his worshippers, and would he do anything at all? He is not empowering his cult. I will put it that way. There are gods out there, because we're about to talk about the Silversworn. There are gods out there who will pose as other entities and offer power to other followers doing other things if they think it will help their own agenda. But the red-haired man does not have divine power to offer to his cult. His cult exists and will probably exist for all time. It is, and again, the beatific hand is what they called themselves. I just remembered that I need to talk about the Silversworn. I can do that. There's not another question.
Let me look.
I see the word theoretically, and that's all I see. Also the Big Lebowski.
Varen said that the beatific hand could be a good plot point towards finding a cure for the black spot.
It is true. It could be.
Theoretically. I agree.
I really like the beatific hand. Other than the Silversworn, they are my best, maybe not my best, my favorite not good group of people that I have created. And I think they're pretty good. They're very involved in things in general in the world, and they are trying to undermine the power of the gods. They're trying to put worship off of the gods and put people off of the idea of worshiping gods. And they're not all humans, but in the way that we in the real world think of humanism, they're a very humanistic cult. We are the masters of our own universe. We should not be depending on anything else. We should not be thinking of anybody else. We should be doing our own thing, and we are responsible for our own fates. And if there is anything else out there, fuck it.
I see Zephyr is typing. Is there... Yeah. The reins of history back in the hands of man. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, pretty much.
They and Estria have a good bit in common, except for their end game. Estria thinks that is very human supremacist, and they want magic to rule everything. The Beatific Hand doesn't care much about what winds up ruling everything or who winds up ruling everything, as long as it's not gods, because the gods fucked up and the gods are fallible and the gods don't deserve to rule us. Let's talk about the Silversworn real quick. The Silversworn... Nobody likes the Silversworn, and I hate that nobody likes the Silversworn because they're heroes. Kind of. So, the Silversworn are a bunch of religious zealots whose home is in Blackreach. They worship a god called Ornette. I don't know if Ornette is mentioned in my pantheon. I think he is now. He didn't used to be, because he is actually another god in disguise. He appeared to the first Silversworn and presented them with the idea that all these unnatural things, everything that wasn't originally in creation of the material plane, needed to die. That included tieflings, it included Aasimar, it included orcs and goblins and trolls, ettins, really anything in the player's handbook or monster manual that isn't a beast or a playable race minus tieflings, etc. The reason they are called the Silversworn... Oh, we lost somebody in the call. Steve left. I think he knows he doesn't want to hear about the Silversworn. They decided, should be all the way at the bottom of the Lesser Gods.
Yep, we got Ornette on there.
Oh, we do? Okay, great.
Yep.
Ornette is considered an embryonic god, He is an infant. He is sickly. He needs your worship. He needs your help to be a god like he's supposed to be. He needs you to go out and kill all the terrible things that are out there in this world. And to do that, you need to be ready to kill absolutely pretty much everything that isn't you. They use silver as weapons because they're based at a Blackreach, and one of the main things that they wind up confronting are lycanthropes and vampires and fey creatures that are from another plane, and silver is one of the things that can aid them in killing those things. They're pretty messed up. Their high priest is a Death Knight, and they don't know it. Their god, Ornette, is actually a personification of Cray, who is a chaotic, evil manipulator god. He's the only devil lord. He's the only archdevil that cavorts with demons, if that tells you anything about him. And he is encouraging them to thin the ranks of basically everything out there and to go around just wanton murdering because he thinks it's fun and funny. And they are all about it and worship him as Ornette. Their signature look is that I've only ever written this down. I've never spoken this to anyone. To become a Silversworn is to abandon everything that makes you an individual so that you can give your all to the cause. So they put you through a period of isolation in sensory deprivation. They bury you with no access to light or any sense that would help you. They keep you alive through magic, little food, little access to water, no human contact, no conversation, just you in the silent dark. Until you're ready, and once the egg timer dings and you are properly insane, they take you out for a little ritual where their base is a silver mine in the Rhinefang Mountains. They pour molten silver over your head so that it erases your face. It clings to your skull and winds up giving you a rather skeletal, silver, shiny look. And then, thusly adorned, you go and are personally responsible for breaking every tie you've had to your past self. So you go back to your old farm and you kill your wife and children and you burn it down. And then you have no reason to be anything other than a Silversworn anymore, so you're a great soldier. Congratulations, you made the cut. And then you are free to go and heroically rescue anyone out there who is in need of you and capable of throwing your life away for the cause if necessary, because you have no reason to live. Bless you.
Excuse me.
Killing werewolves and demons and trolls and lycanthropes and basically any old thing that doesn't belong here. And they have been known to quest after creatures. If they catch your scent, they do not let go. They will chase you across the world to put you down. And I don't know why anyone doesn't want to play a Silversworn. That is a joke, but I would really love it if someone would. In fact, somebody, who was it? Walt, my man Walter McIntyre, who played in my Amber Sands campaign, said, I want to be an escaped Silversworn. I want to be someone who was half-cooked and got out of that sensory deprivation thing and ran. And I thought, that is a great idea. But if Silversworn show up in Dame Height for any reason, if they make it out of Blackreach, if they get bored of all of the problems that are in Blackreach, it's because something got away and they're not leaving till they get it.
How many ex-Silversworn do we have, and how often?
Ex-Silversworn?
Yeah.
Not many. You don't retire from being a Silversworn. Once they break you, you're broken. If you manage to get away during the breaking process, you are probably hunted just like anything else. So they can put you back and let you finish cooking.
It's fair. That was Zephyr's question. I believe we've answered.
Yeah, it is a failing of theirs if somebody gets away. And they tend to correct their mistakes. So it should be more of the exception than the rule. Most, to the people of Blackreach, they are feared because if for any reason they might think you are a monster, like a Yuan-Ti pureblood, or a tiefling, a goblin, or, a lot of things that some player characters can play, they're going to come after you if they find you. But to the non-exceptional, ordinary person just trying to live in Blackreach in a world filled with horrors where you're afraid to go outside of your house at night, they're heroes. They make the boogeyman go away. They intentionally hunt the things that go bump in the night. That is never the perspective of the player characters, but if you're going to be running in my world, there are people out there who think the Silversworn are literally a godsend. Because the god or net sent them to keep you safe.
Feeling some parallels with Witchers.
Yeah. If Witchers were really racist and killed rather than ask questions. Because I feel like Geralt has you're not really hurting anything. Just fuck off, will you? Will you stop stealing these people's props and shit?
Yeah.
They don't do that. At least, as a rule, they don't do that. Actually, it would be really fascinating to see a Silversworn who retained some sense of humanity, but tried to keep the job. I think that would be an interesting character. That'd be a character I would play.
That would be.
No one would like them, but I'd play them, and I'd have fun. How many? Okay.
That was it. Yeah, we're caught up.
We have done a little over 2 hours of this, when I intended to do about 30 minutes. I've had a good time.
You thought this was going to be 30 minutes?
Well, if we weren't taking questions and all I had to do was talk, I think we maybe would have got there. Also, if I didn't drink the entire time. So let's start to do the wrap up. If I haven't said it in this video or in this meeting, however you are consuming it, it is probably up for debate. If there's any aspect of my... I never got to the Flying Isles.
The Ember Isles.
Yeah.
That was a rather big thing.
The Dragonborn used to be in charge of a lot of stuff. They lived on these islands that flew over the sky by arcane levitation, and they had a lot of magical secrets unlocked that a lot of other races did not. A Rakshasa Maharaja was summoned to this plane. Basically, an archdevil Rakshasa. And he convinced / manipulated / dominated a Dragonborn to take him to her home, disabled its magical defenses, opened a portal to the abyss, filled the place with demons. It plummeted from the sky. It lit on fire with hellfire and remains burning to this day, some decade later. He eventually got defeated, but you can't undo the basic extinction of a race. In America, there is at least there used to be a saying, everybody remembers where they were when the Twin Towers fell, right? There was a big cultural event that was absolutely devastating, and everyone remembers where they were when they heard about it. That is what Dragonborn have to look back to, is when the Flying Isles fell. And then they were the Burning Isles for a while, and the fire has since begun to dissipate, and now they are the Ember Isles. They fell into the sea between North Shore and Lustra. They are accessible by boat ride or by airship flight. And a lot of cultural and arcane and religious artifacts and lore that the incredibly advanced Dragonborn people once had is there for the taking, if you are willing to wade through armies of demons to find it. There's a few Dragonborn NPCs like Gaius Weir at the Trove in our D&D play-by-post server. He was not there. He was not in his cultural homeland when it fell. And other Dragonborn, including him, to a certain extent, feel guilty that they weren't there to defend their home when the Flying Isles fell. And other Dragonborn who were away on business and arbiters of Jolin and whatnot might have opinions about other Dragonborn. But since it fell within the lifetime of a adventuring age Dungeons and Dragons character, if people play Dragonborn in my setting, they know their ancestral home was overtaken by demons, and that is a wonderful roleplay and backstory hook that a lot of people have taken advantage of when playing in my world. Almost every campaign I run, when I mention the Flying Isles, somebody plays a Dragonborn.
Sounds like a place the keepers really want to explore. I would agree.
Yes, they do. That is priority one. That's why they have the relationship with Ebonhain Academy, so they can use their airship to get over there safely and get in and get out easily to recover shit. That was something that Steve and I discussed heavily before we invited other people into the server. It just hasn't happened yet. When the keepers get a couple of guys like real adventuring level to go and mount an expedition, that's exactly what the fuck they're gonna do.
I can see them potentially partnering with the Red Hunt, seeing as it's run by a Dragonborn.
Possibly, and the Red Hunt would love the chance to smash some demon heads. Veritas would love to get some religious artifacts and whatnot. It could be a nice excuse to bring the Damehide Fields together.
A combo quest.
Mad affinity for anyone who goes
so much
to the Ember Isles. Since the people who would be potentially running these encounters, some of them are in this call, it has to be mad dangerous. Like, the only things alive here are demons.
Level prerequisite.
Period.
For sure.
Oh, I mean, you can let the level 4 guys go. They're not coming back. But every now and again, you need just cannon fodder, you know?
We did originally talk about having certain encounters that had level prerequisites.
Oh, I mean, I'm happy to break those level prerequisites. Just, don't expect to come back alive.
I'm trying to protect people from you.
Smart. I will also confess this. I have not run but one quest. It wasn't even an adventure, it wasn't even a dungeon that touched the Ember Isles since they were the Flying Isles. And I have so many things. I have so many things.
Once we're ready to
Player character death builds character, right?
Huh?
Okay. I thought so. What were you saying?
I was saying, the Ember Isles would be a good thing to discuss as a group once we're ready to expand a little bit beyond Damehide.
Yeah.
I think once we start getting higher level characters, that will be the I'm bored, I need a challenge. Here you go.
In my head, if you are level 10 and below, you don't really want to go there and walk more than 500 feet away from the ship. It's you're going to alert something. It's not worth getting on the ship to go there if you're not going to get into a dungeon, and you're probably not coming back from the dungeon with anything worth going there for if your level isn't at the double digits. But feel free to prove me wrong. Maybe there's stuff just laying out on the streets. Maybe there's stuff that's not in a dungeon or in a temple or in a subterranean cache somewhere, and you can just kind of get in and get out. Good. But what I was trying to say earlier, if I haven't covered it here, it is negotiable if it is determined at all. Just because it was true in a campaign that I ran that took place 900 years in the past doesn't mean it is still true today. This is more to express the history and the systems of the world than it is to express how the world works now, or how sentiments are now, or how the race's rules and mechanics of the world work. If you have ideas that don't contradict the way that the gods work. And when I say that, I don't mean the gods don't intervene. I mean there are consequences to the gods intervening. And when I say gods, I also mean archfey and archfiends and whatnot. As long as you respect the divinity of divine creatures, that they are not beholden to the rules that the player characters are beholden to. As long as you are open to the ideas that Estria exists and they're kind of human supremacist, and the Silversworn exist and they are wildly racist and like to kill things. Or that Sintra exists and political discourse could possibly save the world. Or the Dame Hythe exists and there's a meritocracy and they have a simulacrum-fueled immortal dwarf lord holding the reins of the city. Go nuts.
Would a Silversworn even be let into Dame Hythe?
Yeah. They would probably have a blueback following them around at all times.
Yeah. Steve would like to know if Gore died.
If who?
G-O-R.
Gore? Gore Kravesh, canonically didn't die in the conflict with Aluhalin. So unless you determine that he went for a swim and drowned, or died of old age in the past 10 years, he's probably still kicking somewhere. Donner is definitely still alive. He's probably running the corpse guard, low-key.
Is Aluhalin still alive?
No, Gore and, God, what was her name? Gore and his wife, girlfriend-ish person.
Rin,
thank you. Gore and Rin and their little adventuring backup dancers did kill Aluhalin. Which means they sent him back to the Nine Hells. So, like all Rakshasa, he is going to go back there and regenerate. So, up to you if Gore went back there and killed him or not. I don't have further plans for Aluhalin, so, come up with a convincing reason he's dead, and he's dead. I see the GIF. That's what I had.
Cool. I think I have less questions about this. I've mostly just been absorbing it. I think most of this makes sense. I'm sure that possibly reading over it later, there may be more questions.
I'm looking forward to reading it over it later because you said you typed
This
some entertaining stuff.
This is very line of thought. Like, I'm not trying to make this make sense yet. It's a rough draft. It's a very, very rough draft.
Every decision I've ever made has been a rough draft. So
A lot of stuff is spelled just by me listening to you say it through the headphones. So
that's how I spell stuff.
So spellings are probably definitely off.
Alright, well, I've been drinking whiskey for 2 hours and 18 minutes, so
Me too.
That's a good reason for me to step away from the camera. So if you were a part of this meeting, I'll actually log into the Discord server in a minute and continue to talk to you about this if you want. And get back on and roleplay and answer some messages that I see that I've received while we were doing this. If you're watching the recording, God bless you. Why? Why did you stick around? I hope you found this interesting or entertaining. This is world lore that has been built up for the past 8 years. There's more of it, just not more that I felt was consequential for people trying to run in a particular city in my world at this time. If for some reason I put this on YouTube and this is my most liked video or something, I can talk more, but I would be very surprised. Either way, if you've made it this far in the video or in the meeting, thank you very much for listening. I'm glad you showed this much interest in this thing that I've created and that I have worked with other people to build over 8 or 9 years. And I look forward to continuing to tell stories in here. I look forward to continuing to build the lore of this world and creating new headcanon. And it has always been collaborative storytelling. A lot of the stuff that I have mentioned already was not come up with by just me. And I look forward to you contributing to that. And, you know, the next time I record this video, your stuff will be in there. Anything else?
The only other thing I would include is that we are also going to make a comprehensive map of the entire world.
When she says we,
I mean, Rob is going to tell me where things go, and I'm going to put it down onto a thing. That will include a current day accurate map as to where everything is in this entire world in relation to each other.
it's ambitious on her part.
Yep. And possibly some overlays that will explain some past relations, such as prior to the racist wizards splitting their land, that kind of thing.
Poor Estrians. History will remember them so poorly.
Or even prior to the islands being on fire, or
Yeah.
you know, anything else. But I hope to do that. It will not be done today or even tomorrow, but it will be done.
Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you much for asking your questions. I will see you in a couple of minutes, or I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, Katie, for joining me for this one, and for drawing a map that you will eventually draw. Bye now!